بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, Ramadan is very close. It's coming upon us inshallah within a very short time. And Ramadan, Shahr Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Qur'an, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Ramadan is the month in which the Qur'an was revealed. And mashallah, based on that, people have great attachment to the Qur'an in the month of Ramadan. Now, among many communities, there's something that they do which is really praiseworthy. They read a lot of Qur'an. There's a hadith related by Imam Bukhari. Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu relates that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, whoever recites the Qur'an, then he gets a reward for every letter. He gets 10 rewards. Harfan harfan. Every letter he gets 10 rewards. Now, generally among people who don't understand the Qur'an, because Arabic is not their language, and they know how to read but they don't understand the language and they don't understand the words, they see no reason to read slowly. They see no reason to necessarily ponder, because they don't know the language. However, you have to realize that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's reading in general, if you look at the hadith about it, there's actually a whole chapter on the recitation of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Bab ma jaa fi qira'ati Rasulillah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the Shama'il collection of Imam Tirmidhi, and he mentions in the first 3 hadith are there where related from Salama radiyallahu anha and Anas radiyallahu anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's recitation was with a lot of pauses, where he would stop at the ayat. The way he would read would be mufassaran, which means that every letter of it was correctly intoned and pronounced, and he would reflect. It was in a very nice voice. So essentially what the ulama are mentioning is that rather than read a lot, it's better to read a lesser amount but with concentration, with understanding, right? So that's exactly what I want to make the point of my message today, that people think that if they just read lots and lots, and there's actually competitions that take place. I finished 10 Qur'ans in Ramadan, I finished 20, I finished 30, I finished this many, I read this many ajza or supara in a day. That's all very good. It's all very good. But really, if you're spending, for example, 5 hours in Ramadan reading Qur'an, and you manage to read maybe 20 juz in a day, like the really fast ones, right? The point is that if you read slower with more concentration, even if you don't understand it all, you'll understand certain things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. It might even drive you to actually go and look in at tafsir, to look in at tafsir and to try to understand the message of that surah and the message of that story that you're reading. To read it slowly and savor it, thinking that it's the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not just something that I want to read lots and lots of, because the ulama have mentioned that to read with understanding is better to read more without understanding. Now, I know that we're not going to learn Arabic overnight, but at least if you read slower with the vocabulary that we have as Muslims, there's a number of words that are from Arabic that is in every Muslim's vocabulary. They're going to get some understanding of the story. You will know, for example, there's certain things that that certain surahs have this story in them, or have this message in them, or it's about this. So that's why I would really encourage that we split our time properly. Now, first and foremost, to read slowly and with proper intonation, observing the rules of tajweed and qira'ah, and making sure that we don't mix up the za and the dhal, we don't mix up the sin and the sad, we don't mix up the ha and the ha, the qaf and the kaf. These make a difference. They make a difference to the meaning. For example, the word in Arabic for qalbun, for heart, is qalbun, and if you don't say qalbun with a qaf and you say kalbun, it actually becomes a dog. So likewise, the word qalamun, qalamun, which means a pen, and if you say kalamun, it means a wound, right? So you can see the big difference between just qaf and kaf. There's a similar difference between ha and ha, right? And that's why it's very important that we learn some rules of tajweed as well. However, just for a practical level, firstly, we should generally read slowly anyway, right? It's about the time you take to read the Quran than how much you read. Now, I know we have stories from the past of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah and many others. They finished this many Qurans in the month of Ramadan, 60 Qurans and 40 and 30 and 20. We have all of these great numbers. The thing you have to remember is that first and foremost, it's their karama. It's a special miracle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed on them, that they could fulfill the rights of the Quran and at the same time read a lot of it. And you can understand that from the Quran, where you can understand that from the story of Dawood alayhi salam, where it's related that He read the Psalms. He used to be able to read the whole of the Psalms, the Zabur, just when he was saddling his horses. So you can tell from that as well that there's a miracle aspect to it, right? And you won't expect that these great ulama are reading without thinking. The thing you have to also realize is that once you become a mufassir of the Quran, you understand the tafsir of the Quran, you could actually read faster and just have all of the ideas just flow by, right? Because you know it so well. Right, so you know what it's relating to. You can ponder over it, and then there's the miracle aspect of it, as I mentioned as well. So firstly, read slowly. It's about the time that you spend with the Quran as opposed to how much you get accomplished without any kind of thought whatsoever. However, on a very practical note, I would like to really encourage that we split our time like this. Let's just take an example that if we're going to spend, just say, we're going to spend 1 hour with the Quran, right? Whether in Ramadan or outside of Ramadan, we're going to spend 1 hour with the Quran. What you want to do is that, okay, 50% of the time, let's just say for half an hour, what I would suggest you do is that you read the Quran slowly, calmly, just as reading, just to accomplish a certain amount that you read, because you think that's very important. So do that, right? Because it is important to read the Quran, so you do that. Number two, the other 25% of the time, so half an hour is spent reading, 25%, 15 minutes is spent memorizing. So increase your memorization. What that means is, if you have memorized certain chapters of the Quran, certain surahs of the Quran, verses of the Quran, like Surah Yasin, Surah Rahman, Surah Al-Mulk, whatever it may be, you've memorized it before, now you kind of don't have it fully memorized, or you've forgotten it, use this time to memorize. Now remember, if I say that I want to memorize Tabarakalladhi biyadihi al-mulk, Surah Al-Mulk, because I've forgotten it, or I want to memorize it afresh, to memorize it, you're going to have to repeat it over and over again. So you have to say Tabarakalladhi biyadihi al-mulk wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir, Tabarakalladhi biyadihi al-mulk wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir, Tabarakalladhi biyadihi al-mulk wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. So you read it over and over again. Remember, you're still getting 10 times you're still getting reward for every letter 10 times, right? So you're getting 10 rewards. As you'll get the same reward as you're just reading anything else. Yes, you're reading the same verse over and over again. I think you're going to get more reward, in fact, because you're using it to commit it to memory, to record it in your heart, which is a really noble thing, because in the hereafter, whatever you memorize, whatever you know, whatever you acted upon, inshallah, that will help you to ascend Jannah. So the more surahs that we can have memorized in our heart, even if we don't have the whole Quran memorized, by the end of our life, it's only virtuous, and you're still getting the reward for reading. In fact, when you memorize something, you'll be able to read it a bit faster than if you hadn't anyway. You'll be able to read it more fluently, right? So you can still have more thought without having to worry too much about, am I reading it correctly or not? Because if you've memorized something correctly, it's like that. You will know it. So that's 15 minutes of for that, and then 15 minutes minimum to look at a tafsir and a translation. So take a portion, right? Start with the surahs that we read in our salat, then start to look at the tafsir and translation of the famous virtuous surahs that I mentioned: Surah Yasin, Surah Al-Mulk, Surah Al-Waqi'ah, Surah Al-Rahman, Surah Al-Kahf, Surah Al-Sajda, Surah Al-Dukhan. These are the ones that are mentioned to have great virtue, specific virtue. So Surah Al-Waqi'ah, to look at the meanings of that. So when we read it the next time round, we will know what it's speaking about. We will know what the secrets it holds. We will understand what the message is in there. We will see what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us to do, what is instructing us to do. So again, 50% of the time read, 25% memorize, and 25% ponder, reflect, and understand the meaning. And eventually you will see that the benefits of this will be much greater than just reading. Now I have to just clarify that there are people who go around and putting down the whole of the non-Arabic speaking world by saying that if you read Quran without understanding, it's not worthwhile at all. That's also a fallacy. That's also a total wrong notion, because the Quran is powerful whether you understand it or not. However, those who read it without understanding, they need to move a notch higher, because the beauty, the benefit, and the objective is to be able to understand what you're reading, so you know what your Lord is telling you. The ulama mentioned that reading Quran is superior than doing dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the Quran is the words of Allah. There's no comparison to it. In fact, it is considered the most and greatest form of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You might think, well, salat is. Yes, salat is, but salat has a major aspect of Quran recitation in there as well. So in terms of the optional worships that we have, reading the Quran is very powerful. And there's a hadith which mentions that whoever has no time to make dua to me, to ask me for his needs, or to remember me in any other way, because he's so engrossed in reading the Qur'an, I will give him the best that is given to the people who ask. So all the best du'as that are made in the world, Allah will give it to the one who is so engrossed in the Qur'an because he has no time for anything else. So based on that, again, please, the division of the Qur'an, really let's look at it properly, and let's really make our Ramadan and outside of Ramadan, because when you understand what you're reading, you're going to be more encouraged to read it and to benefit from it, and it's going to go even beyond Ramadan as well. It shouldn't just be in Ramadan, it should be outside of Ramadan as well. May Allah give you and I and everybody tawfiq to do this. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.